This conference will now be recorded.
The council meeting of December 15th, 2020 will now please come to order. Due to this meeting being a virtual meeting, council is asking if anyone would like to address council who's participating through the computer. Please use the chat feature now to let Clerk Massarolo know you have a comment, and you will be called on during the comment portion of the meeting. If you are calling on a phone or do not have access to the chat feature, we will give directions during the public comment portion of our meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mrs. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Broussard?
Present.
Mr. Glassburn?
Here.
Ms. Heeman?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Limpert?
Present.
Mr. Schuman?
Present.
Ms. Williamson?
The following legislation is considered for suspension of the rules this evening on second reading. Resolution 2020-127, Resolution 2020-143, Resolution 2020-144, and on first reading, Ordinance 2020-149. Mayor Kennedy, do you have a report this evening?
Madam President, no report this evening.
Thank you. Law Director Garreau, do you have a report this evening?
Thank you, Madam President. I do have a report. First, I wanted to compliment the council and the committee on the budget process this year. I thought it was very good. A lot of good input, a lot of good discussion, very meaningful. And so I thought that was I've sat through a lot of those, and I thought that was it was pretty well done. So hats off to you on that. Second, new litigation has been commenced against the city. It is Kelly Patrick versus City of North Olmsted, not to be confused with Patrick Kelly. So Kelly Patrick has filed in the Ohio Court of Claims and is alleging a violation of a public records request. We deny that is in fact the case. Nevertheless, in the Ohio Court of Claims, it's immediately referred to mediation so they can get to the bottom of this and try to find a way to resolve it. So the law department will be defending the City of North Olmsted in that claim. A second matter is this very strange case. It was here, it went away, it came back, and it looks like it's going away again. It's this mandamus action. I mentioned it a couple times already, where there's an attempt to force the prosecutor and the Cuyahoga County prosecutor to bring charges on a case that's like a decade old. And it was dismissed once, and the Court of Appeals last week, took another look at this and said, no, thank you. We have filed a motion to dismiss. That was granted. The relator filed a motion to reconsider. That was denied. So I think it's done unless he appeals to the Ohio Supreme Court, which who knows, maybe he will. But hopefully that's finished. The court was pretty clear that they weren't going to have any more of this. So we defended that successfully. Lastly, I mentioned during the budget process about litigation and claims. As recently as a couple weeks ago, I said most of our claims are handled by insurance defense when we have personal injuries and things like that. I mentioned a specific issue at the rec center where somebody was injured. Counsel has been retained, and that matter was sent to the law department, and we, in fact, forwarded through HR to the insurance carrier to address that. And the carrier the lawsuit hasn't been filed yet, but it certainly falls within the range of our insurance defense. And so that's that. So those are the three items for tonight. And thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Finance Director Kopfer, do you have a report this evening?
Madam President, other than working closely with the administration and council to improve the temporary appropriations, which I am grateful for, having completed that. And I just want to say thank you. And other than that, that's basically been most of my time these last few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving into council committee reports, Councilman Broussard, Chairman of the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman Schuman, Chairman of the Finance Committee, do you have a report this evening?
Do I ever? Okay, let's start with Finance met 12/5, 8 o'clock a.m. Committee President was Schuman, Broussard, Kelly, along with all of Council, President Jones, the Mayor, Becky Kovach, the Mayor's Assistant, Finance Director Kopfer, Assistant Finance Director Sperling, Rec Commissioner Drensky, Wastewater Treatment Superintendent Blum, Chief Wagner from the Police, Road Foreman Demoline, Fire Chief Shep, Mayor's Court Kathy Cole, HR Director Gallo, Law Director Garreau, Safety Assistant Renee Overstreet, Fleet Manager Tony Farella, Springville Event Coordinator Brittany Mild, and Brett from the golf course. I don't know Brett's last name. You didn't give me that, Chuck. I just want you to know that. Engineer DeFranco, Mike Bosa from Storm, Director Lieber from Planning and Development, Chris Allegra from Social Services, Eric Lundberg from IT, Jackie Anderson from the Senior Center, and guests. And I hope that covers everybody.
Mr. Chairman, it's Smith.
What's that? I missed someone?
Brett Smith. That's his name.
Smith? Okay. Thank you. I stand informed. So we met 12/5, 8 a.m. Finance. We were there to discuss the temporary budget, which is 2020-128, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the City of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2021, declaring an emergency. And remember, this report is as of the 5th. I'm going to start with revenue assumptions. Finance Department uses general historic trends to estimate city income, and 2021 may prove a tough year to estimate. As to property tax collection, the state county estimates collections will remain steady. As of December 2020, income tax collections are down about 1.4 million from 2019 year over year, and 2021 collections may be lower yet. Director Kopfer estimates about $850,000 lower. It was 15,900,000 in 19. Mayor's Court is down in 2020, and finance estimates income to stay down in 21 for a number of reasons. The STOP program is halted, and we expect many of our veteran officers to be retiring. Hotel motel is down from 400,000 in 19 to 224,000 this year. And we are budgeting 270 as there's been a slight upward trend at the tail end of 2020, and let's hope that continues. Building permits are down and projected to remain low. Rec is down about $1 million in revenue. Cut expenses by about $650,000. They did manage to come real close to balancing their budget. EMS is down 16%. 865,000 in 19, 750,000 in 20, and estimated to be slightly higher, 764 in 21. Remember that 50% of that goes to the general fund and 50% of that goes to EMS. Springvale Golf projected to be up about $50,000 year over year from 19, and they estimate similar numbers for 21, about $1,150,000. Ballroom was devastated by COVID, down from 6 weddings from the original schedule to 41. I'm down from the original schedule of 41. Debt service requirements for 20 were $5,121,000, and it's estimated $3,854,000 for 21. But that does not include the $12 million in notes and the math on that, and Director Kopfer's amendment will be addressing that. Also, the notes, the new spending in those notes are, of course, for street resurfacing and then the Brick Park Road project. This budget has no reserves funded, but also no transfers from other funds to accomplish this has been estimated. The director wishes to determine after final unencumbered balances are determined, needed transfers, especially the separation pay fund, as we are expecting multiple police retirees. Now, the budget. Excuse me for a second. It's been a long evening. The mayor's office cut 22.7 from the budget. This is removing the military pole banners and the party around the fireworks. However, the fireworks remain. Mayor's court pared off about $12,000 off their budget, mostly due to reduced consumption of materials and supplies. That's not a good thing. Recreation 2020 revenues are down by 1/3 and mostly corresponding cuts in expenses. Betsy has an optimistic proposed 2021, but is prepared to shut down in a hurry. They are being careful about not taking big deposits. No large-scale events are planned. Springdale, the golf course is projecting similar numbers for 2021 as 2020. These are again up from 19. They're not asking for much new. There was dredging. There's no dredging required in 21. The ballroom has 44 weddings booked for 21 and are hoping for a better spring and summer. This represents about $500,000 more in revenue. The big story in police is the potential retirement of between 6 and 9 officers. The police are asking for a few things. The 2014 Co-Band dash cam system is obsolete, and the chief would like to go with a WatchGuard video server. The police are asking to continue purchasing 2 new cars this year, and as in 21. They are requesting upgrading the 50-year-old plumbing in the jail also. It does sound like it needs some work. Fire Chief Shep says that he does not expect the need for replacements from retiring. He's asking for about $650,000 in new equipment and supplies and repairs. This includes turnout gear, which they try to rotate out each year. Of course, the biggest is the items is $430,000 for a new EMS squad. This is the same vehicle that was pushed back in 2020. Gear management in the safety budget decreased to $5,000. Safety feels we will get fewer permits this year as this is the 6th year of culling. Safety is requesting City Hall COVID supplies of $3,000 for dollars new in 21. Service, Storm is requesting to outside contract catch basins. They're estimating $58,000 in contracts. Previously, we've been doing it ourselves, and it doesn't seem to be the best approach. The JetVac truck, $465,000. This would replace the 2009 model that was handed down after its former life in sanitary. Service Streets would like to replace the 21-year-old street sweeper, $270,000. Also purchase a mini excavator and trailer for $108,000. Fleet would like to purchase lifts for the service garage, $23,500. These are all new spending. Wastewater treatment plant. Brian Blum says he has a couple of folks retiring. He spoke about progress toward the EQ basin on the South Interceptor sanitary line. Wastewater has limited their capital purchases in 21 due in part because of the $320,000 balance due on the CCTV truck. They have additional capital improvement plans of about $550,000. Wastewater is separate funding outside the general fund, and it's based on user fees. There's no increase in rates for 21 for commercial or residential. HR, no staff changes. Director Gallo has left much of the outside services, which had been planned for 2020, off of the temporary budget, including insurance, property appraisal, and employee training, as well as cutting labor relations estimates in half. She added $3,000 to her budget for additional insurance costs. Munis support has been moved to this division, so that changes the budget a little bit. Civil service pre-employment testing will be up due to police retirements and other issues. IT, about $85,000 in multiple budget items to continue the battle against cyber attacks. Building is holding tight except for the new contract costs, the employee contract costs. No ward sweeps in 2021 are budgeted. Healthcare renewal, we're looking at 13% increase in fixed costs. The planning department, no staff change. Under contractual services, the director would like to continue the Heritage Home Loan Program, $12,000 a year. Director Lever has put in a budget for boards and commissions. The hope is we can have some events in 2021. Community Life Services looking for a new contract for senior transportation connection. Youth and Family Services would like to add an outdoor meeting area. Engineering, part-time inspector position to remain open. Bowen's services continue. We still have a bunch of projects pending. Brook Park Road, streets, resurfacing, the EQ basin, the storm basin. These are all capital improvement projects from the Capital Improvement Fund. Economic Development Fund, we look to continue with MB3 Consulting and Arizona Alliance memberships. The Senior Center is hoping that programs will return. Law, no staffing changes, no capital purchases, and standard increases in salaries. Director Garreau has offered to cut his outside services from $20,000 to $12,500. Finance, no significant changes. We did get a break in costs from Rita since we are collecting less tax, so it's going to cost us about $200,000 less. Counsel had one significant change. We no longer are paying for security. We closed sometime after 1 o'clock that day. We met again on Tuesday, 12/8 at 7 o'clock. Everybody still awake? I'm just checking. Just, yeah, nod your head if you're still awake. Thank you. There's a bunch of people that are in the dark right now too. So, Finance Committee met 12/8/2020 at 7 o'clock p.m. Present were committee members Schuman and Broussard, council members Glassburn, Williamson, Limpert, and Heeman, the mayor, directors of law, planning, finance, as well as assistant to finance Keith Sperling, and our municipal advisor Matt Stasinski. Among the legislation discussed, and this is not in chronological order, was the 2020-129 through 2020-142. And I am not going to read all these. I just don't have it in me, but I will give you the bond summaries here because they're really exciting. So 2021-29 is $125,000 for the telecommunications equipment from 2018. 2021-30 is $1,405,000 for the annual street improvement program from 2018. 2021-31 is $1,035,000 for the 2019 fire tower truck. 2021-32 is $1,260,000 for the Springvale improvements phase 2. That was 2019 also. 2021-33 is the 2019 City Hall HVAC and police station roof and HVAC improvements. That total was $1,330,000. 2021-34 is the 2019 IT hardware software infrastructure redundancy project, which was $260,000. 2021-35 is the 2020 City Hall HVAC change in plans to make roof units, $175,000. 2021-36 was the 2020 ice rink improvements, $2,200,000. 2021-37 is the 2020 Country Club East. That's $1,165,000. I believe that's going to get paid back out of TIF. Is that correct, Carrie? 2020-138 is the Springvale 2020 Springvale golf equipment, $220,000. 2021-39 is the 2020 IT desktops, Windows 10 capable and applicable licenses, $300,000. 2021-40 is the 2020 annual street improvement program, $1,055,000. 2021-41 is the 2021 annual street improvement program. That's $1 million new money. 2021-42 is the 2021 Brook Park improvement with Odot. Our end is $1 million new money. Total proposed bond issue is $12,530,000. Wait a minute. As per Matt Stasinski, who is again, our municipal advisor, we can expect very low interest rates, perhaps as low as 1.35%. These will be going out in February, and Mr. Broussard and I voted 2-0 to recommend to full council. Next, let's see. We also discussed 2020-143. You'll have to excuse me. That's a resolution authorizing and affirming the mayor acceptance of cash donations offered by several donors in amounts of $1,000, in amounts over $1,000 to be used by Oxcart Pantry and declaring an emergency. We had 4 donations over $1,000 to the Oxcart Pantry by individuals or entities. Committee voted 2-0 to recommend with suspension. We also discussed 2020-127. This is the transfer ordinance. 127. This is an ordinance to make and transfer appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency as amended. This was asked for suspension this evening. Most of the increased expenditures were balanced within departments. However, several big expenditures added were not the least of which were $70,000 in extra street rejuvenation in streets, $987,000 to prepay our portion of the Brook Park Road improvements. That's from the Permanent Improvement Fund. $416,400 for the Country Club East, that's in Great Northern TIF. $102,000 for the walking path. That's money that will be coming back in CDBG funds. Community Development Block Grant funds. $78,000 in capital improvements. That's the Sonic Wall computer appliances. $20,000 in refunds at Springvale. $200,000 in refunds from the Trust Agency Fund. As of 12/8, the amendments were limited to $2,400 in additional spending in the Corona Relief Fund. That was the amended, that's what we had in our hands at the time. Total increase of $1,898,000. The total budget is $76,400,000. 2021-27 was recommended with suspension, 2-0, and as amended. And at this time, I would like to move to amend 2021-27 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to amend 2020-127 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
2020-127 is amended with a vote of 6-0.
Thank you. We actually began this meeting with the discussion of 2021-28, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency. And of course, that is again is our budget. And at this meeting, although no actual amendments were offered before or even during the meeting, the finance director had received some concerns and previous to the meeting from Councilman Limpert regarding certain funds not being replenished. I believe the 27th pay and the separation pay were his concerns. Some of the members of council expressed a desire to be given some time to prepare possible amendments. I did ask for balanced amendments, and the director asked for a loose timeline of Thursday morning. Committee voted 2-0 to hold 2021-28 in committee, with a meeting scheduled for before caucus today. We closed at 7:50. I can go ahead and report out on the meeting tonight, or could I hold that until the 22nd? Would that be more appropriate?
It would actually be best if you could please report tonight.
I will. It won't be a very good report. I apologize, but I wasn't writing it as we went. Okay, let me see if I can find it. Uh-oh, we're gonna have trouble. I do apologize. Got a lot of papers on my desk.
Hopefully your dog didn't grab them off your desk and run away with them like mine did.
Oh my goodness, where's my notes? Okay, here we go. Okay, we met tonight at Tuesday, the 15th at 6:48. Committee members Schuman, Broussard, Kelly. Present were council members Limpert, Glassburn, Heeman, President Jones, the mayor, assistant to the mayor Becky Kovach, directors Kopfer, assistant director Keith Sperling of finance, director Garreau, director Gallo, and guests. And I hope I got everybody. So we spent the meeting discussing a list of possible amendments that was actually prepared by Councilperson Glassburn, and the director expressed that, and it was also the information I had, that the administration had taken this all very seriously. She went through all the points on this very carefully. Many of these issues, the big purchases, will be before us again. After much discussion, I made a motion to move the budget out of committee and recommend to full council. It was seconded by Mr. Broussard and voted 2-1 to move out of committee. We closed at 8:06. And that concludes my reports. Thank you very much.
Madam President,
Director,
Mr. Chairman, you need to amend.
I do, don't I?
Yes.
In fact, we voted to move this out of committee with amendments. At this time, I move that we amend 2020-128. Ask for a second.
Second.
motion to amend 2021-28 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
yes,
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
2021-28 is amended with a vote of 6-0.
And I believe that concludes my reports. And I thank you very much for your indulgence and patience.
Thank you. Councilman Limpert, Chairman of the Streets and Transportation Committee, do you have a report this evening?
I do have a report this evening, Madam President. Thank you. The Streets and Transportation Committee met via web meeting on 8 December at 7:50 p.m. Present were committee members Glassburn and Limpert, council members Broussard, Heeman, Schuman, Williamson, the mayor, law director, finance director, HR director, and planning director. On the agenda was resolution 2020-144, which was a resolution to cooperate with the Director of Transportation of the Ohio Department of Transportation for the project to resurface Park Road, State Route 17, between Lorraine Road and the eastern North Olmsted corporate limit, including gateway enhancements at Lorraine Road and at IR 480 in the city of North Olmsted, declaring an emergency. After a little background, this is just a follow-on to the process to go to competitive bidding for Brook Park Road, and the cost of the funding is approximately $1.4 million. and the motion passed by a vote of 3-0. Also on the agenda was Resolution 2020-111, which is Clegg Road ODOT safety funding. Mrs. Lieber, let me just read that really quick. A resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Planning and Communication Development to make applications to the Ohio Department of Transportation on behalf of the City of North Olmsted for funding for safety-related improvements to Clegg Road, and further authorizing funds for the required local match, and further authorizing the mayor to accept the grant if awarded and to execute a contract for the same and declaring an emergency. This was a continuation of several meetings on Resolution 2020-111. Mrs. Lieber outlined that based on the requests from the committee, the planning director went back to the consultants and believed that an assessment of a third lane option could be achieved within or close to within the scope of the original budget for the safety application. She also provided a 5-year street plan in preparation for the meeting. Ms. Lieber noted that this is a plan as there are a number of variables for example, grants becoming available, percentages of partnership fundings from Odot, county, NOACA, or other entities. Councilman Glassburn noted that going for a third lane would not necessarily be for safety funding. It would be through potentially other funding, which Planning Director Mrs. Lieber noted that she would provide a list of other potential funding types, but expressed concerns on qualification for many of those grants based on feedback from the consultants, and also was concerned that some of those could push the project back in funding cycle to 2026. Councilman Limpert asked council to think about thresholds of the budget that they would be comfortable in spending to support a third lane project versus the less than $175,000 safety application, and iterated that this could lead to reduced options in funding or delays to the project based on certainties of future funding. Councilwoman Heeman expressed the desire for more details on likelihood of failing of non-safety grants, basically some more statistics on the probability of other funding options and how that's happened in the past, and expressed some concern, feeling the third lane would be worth investigating, but did not have an expected threshold at this time for how much to pursue in that approach, and would need more information to do so. The committee recommended to hold this in committee for consultants to complete an application for both the current proposal and a third lane option, and provided additional funding options by a vote of 2-0. The meeting concluded at 8:22 p.m. Since the meeting, Mrs. Lieber noted that the application procedures and funding concerns expressed in the committee have come to fruition, as ODOT has delayed any slated 2024 projects not already in the application pipeline to 2025 at the earliest, which in my view is unfortunate for the residents utilizing Clegg Road. Madam President, this concludes my report.
Thank you. And Councilman, as Vice Chair of the Building, Zoning, and Development Committee, do you have a report this evening?
I do not have a report this evening, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Heeman, Chairwoman of the Environmental Control Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No, I do not. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilman Glassburn, Chairman of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, do you have a report this evening?
Yes, Madam President, I do. The Intergovernmental Relations Committee met on December 8th to consider appointments to boards and commissions at 8:22. Present were committee members Glassburn, Schuman, and Heeman, as well as members Limpert, Broussard, and Williamson and Jones, the mayor, director of law, director of planning and finance, and guests. First under consideration were the appointment of 2 individuals to the Planning and Design Commission, 1 to Building and Zoning Board of Appeals, 4 to Landmarks Commission, and 2 to Arts Commission. I will read the full names and terms in my motion that will follow this, but these are all reappointments, and there were no objections to retaining the individuals. That was passed by a 3-0, moved by myself and seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Second was Council's appointment to the Landmarks Commission of Mr. Dubowski, and I will also read the full term for that as well in my second motion for tonight. So at this I'm sorry. So the committee closed at 8:28 after the 3-0 approval of Mr. Dubowski for landmarks, moved by myself and seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. So at this time, I will move that council make the following reappointments that were afforded by the mayor for Planning and Design Commission. Mr. Humberto Olivos for a 5-year term, 1/1/21 through 12/31/2025. And Mr. Tom Patton, 5 years, 1/1/21 to 12/31/25. For Building and Zoning Board of Appeals, Mr. Robert Papato, 5-year term, 1/1/21 to 12/31/25. For Landmarks Commission, Elizabeth Cardarelli, 2-year term, 1/1/21 to 12/31/22. Jim Gerhart, 2-year term, 1/1/21, 12/31/22. David Neville, 2-year term, 1/1/21, 12/31/22. Sarah Egan Reeves, 2-year term, 1/1/21 to 12/31/22. And lastly, to the Arts Commission, Keith Barron, 4-year term, 1/1/21 to 12/31/24. And Leah Rogalski Davis, 4-year term, 1/1/21 to 12/31/24. And I will ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to reappoint the mayor's recommendations made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Schuman.
Yes.
That motion passes with a vote of 6-0.
Madam President, at this time, I would move council reappoint Mr. Tom Dubowski to the Landmarks Commission for a 2-year term starting January 1st, 2021 to 12/31/22, and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to reappoint council's recommendation made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
That motion passes with a vote of 6-0.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilman Kelly, Chairman of the Recreation, Public Parks and Buildings Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report, Madam President, but I'd like a moment of personal privilege if possible. It's sad to report that a retired North Olmsted police captain, Richard Metzger, passed away a week ago Sunday. He's a longtime resident of North Olmsted, spent his career in North Olmsted, rising to the rank of captain. When he retired from the North Olmsted Police Department, he went to work at Rocky River Municipal Court as a uniformed bailiff, where he was working up until the time where he was hospitalized as his heart got weaker. Passed away at the age of 81, and he worked almost to the last day of his life. So he was a busy guy, a good man, and a loss to the city of North Olmsted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman, for bringing that to our attention, and our thoughts are with his family and friends at this time. Are there any letters or communications to come before council at this time?
Yes, Madam President. Dennis Lambert, who resides at 25057 Cary Lane, emailed a statement to council regarding the Director of Safety and our service positions. He discussed his thoughts in it and said it needs to be settled quickly and quietly. His email was forwarded to council earlier today and will be attached to the meeting minutes of this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for joining our meeting tonight. At this time, council will hear comments from the public. please remember to state your name and address for our clerk. If you live in a city other than North Olmsted, please state the name of that city. We will start with those who have notified our clerk via the chat feature. Anyone who has not notified us via the chat feature and who would like to comment, please unmute your phone and start your comment when prompted. Clerk Massarolo, has anyone notified you that they would like to comment this evening?
No, Madam President.
Thank you. At this time, if there's anyone on our computer or phone who would like to comment, please address council now. Seeing no comments from our audience, we will now move into legislation.
Legislation on third reading. Ordinance 2020-122, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance establishing the rates of compensation for various administrative and legislative personnel for the years 2021, 2022, and 2023, with salary ranges of a 0% increase for 2021 and a 2.5%, 2.5% increase in 2022 and 2023 for full-time and part-time positions, amending sections 14, 15, and 16, and otherwise restating compensation benefits and descriptions for various administrative and legislative personnel for the years 2021, 2022, and 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Madam President.
Councilman Schuman.
Pardon me. I move for adoption of 2021-22. Ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Ordinance 2020-122 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-122 is adopted with a vote of 6-0.
Ordinance 2020-123, introduced by Council President Jones on behalf of herself and all of Council. An ordinance establishing and fixing the compensation for the elected officials of the City of North Olmsted at an increase of 0% for 2022, 0% for 2023, and 2.5% for 2024, and 2% for 2025 for the term of office commencing January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2025.
Madam President.
Councilman Schuman.
I move for adoption of 2021-23. Ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Ordinance 2020-123 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-123 is adopted with a vote of 6-0.
Ordinance 2020-124, introduced by Council President Jones on behalf of herself, the Mayor, and all of Council. An ordinance dispensing with the RFP process otherwise required by sections 111.03 et sec of the Administrative Code and authorizing the Mayor, subject to approval of the Board of Control, if necessary, to enter into a 2-year agreement with the Walter H. Drain Company for the purpose of providing ordinance codification services to the City of North Olmsted and declaring an emergency.
Madam President.
Councilman Schuman.
Move for adoption of 2021-24. Ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Ordinance 2020-124 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-124 is adopted with a vote of 6-0.
Legislation on second reading. Ordinance 2020-127, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance to make and transfer appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency as amended.
Madam President,
Councilman Schuman.
I would move for suspension of the rule requiring 3 readings. This was heard in committee and reported out on expertly this evening. Thank you.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
That motion passes with a vote of 6-0. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address council regarding ordinance 2020-127, please do so now.
Not hearing anyone or seeing anyone, I would move for adoption of 2020-127. Ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2020-127 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-127 is adopted with a vote of 6-0.
Ordinance 2020-128, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency as amended. Ordinance 2020-129, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $125,000, provide funds to pay costs of acquiring and installing telecommunications system equipment and network fiber, together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, for use in carrying out city services and functions, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-130, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $1,405,000 to provide funds to pay costs of improving Alden Drive and certain other designated streets between certain termini in the city by reconstructing and rehabilitating the pavement base, adjusting, constructing, and reconstructing catch basins, curbs and curb ramps, manholes and utility valve and monument boxes, where necessary, preparing the surface and resurfacing, in each case together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-131, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $1,035,000, provide funds to pay costs of acquiring fire apparatus consisting of an aerial platform truck and appurtenant equipment for use by the city's fire department, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-132, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $1,260,000, provide funds to pay costs of renovating, rehabilitating, remodeling, furnishing, equipping, and otherwise improving the clubhouse and ballroom facilities at the city's Springville Golf Course, together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-133, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $1,330,000 to provide funds to pay costs of renovating, rehabilitating, remodeling, adding to, furnishing, equipping, and otherwise improving buildings and facilities in the city's municipal complex, together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-134, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $260,000, provide funds to pay costs of acquiring and installing computer hardware and software, together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, for use in carrying out city services and functions, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-135, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $175,000, provide funds to pay costs of renovating, rehabilitating, remodeling, furnishing, equipping, and otherwise improving the City Hall, together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-136, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $2,200,000, provide funds to pay costs of improving the city's recreation center by renovating, remodeling, rehabilitating, furnishing, equipping, and otherwise improving the ice rink, warming area, and other related facilities, together with all necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-137, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $1,165,000 to provide funds to pay costs of improving Country Club Boulevard between certain termini in the city by reconstructing and rehabilitating the pavement base, constructing a new center island, constructing and reconstructing sidewalks, curbs and curb ramps, and adjusting manholes and utility valve and monument boxes where necessary, preparing the surface and surfacing and resurfacing, and acquiring and installing street lighting and landscaping, in each case together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, and making related sidewalk improvements on Columbia Road, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-138, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds at a maximum aggregate principal amount of $220,000 to provide funds to pay costs of acquiring an aerator, mowers, a sprayer, a bunker rake, a front end loader, a utility vehicle, and other equipment for use at the city's Springville Golf Course and Ballroom facility, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-139, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds at a maximum aggregate principal amount of $300,000, provide funds to pay costs of acquiring and installing computer hardware and software, together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, for use in carrying out city services and functions, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-140, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds at a maximum aggregate principal amount of $1,055,000, provide funds to pay costs of improving Alden Drive, Ashbury Park Drive, Brennan Circle, Brendan Lane, Brighton Drive, Cambridge Drive, Forest Ridge Drive, Hampton Drive, and Somerset Drive between certain termini in the city by reconstructing and rehabilitating the pavement base, adjusting, constructing, and reconstructing catch basins, curbs and curb ramps, manholes and utility valve and monument boxes where necessary, preparing the surface and resurfacing, in each case together with the necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2020-141, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $1 million to provide funds to pay costs of improving, in cooperation with Cuyahoga County and otherwise, Canterbury Road and certain other designated streets between certain termini in the city by reconstructing and rehabilitating the pavement base, adjusting, constructing, and reconstructing catch basins, curbs and curb ramps, manholes and utility valve and monument boxes, where necessary, repairing the surface and resurfacing, in each case together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement. Ordinance 2020-142, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $1 million, provide funds to pay part of the city's portion of the cost of improving Brook Park Road between certain termini in cooperation with the Department of Transportation of the State of Ohio by grading, draining, curbing, reconstructing, and rehabilitating the pavement base and adjusting, constructing, and reconstructing catch basins, curbs, and curb ramps, manholes and utility valve and monument boxes, where necessary, preparing the surface and resurfacing, and providing decorative lighting and landscaping, in each case together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond registrar agreement, a continuing disclosure agreement, and a bond purchase agreement, and providing for the repeal of ordinance number 2020-103. Resolution 2020-143, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. A resolution authorizing and affirming the mayor's acceptance of cash donations offered by several donors in amounts over $1,000 to be used by the Oxcart Pantry and declaring an emergency.
Madam President,
Councilman Schuman.
I'll talk really slowly so Chuck can catch his breath. I'd like to move for suspension of 2020-143, suspension of the rules requiring 3 readings. This was reported out, and there is a time necessity, and I'd like to move for suspension and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
That motion passes with a vote of 6-0. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address council regarding resolution 2020-143, please do so now.
Seeing and hearing none, I would like to move for adoption of 2020-143. Ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt resolution 2020-143 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Resolution 2020-143 is adopted with a vote of 6-0.
Resolution 2020-144, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. A resolution to cooperate with the Director of Transportation of the Ohio Department of Transportation for a project to resurface Brook Park Road, SR 17, between Lorraine Road and the Eastern North Olmsted Corporation limit, including gateway enhancements at Lorraine Road and at IR 480 in the city of North Olmsted, and declaring an emergency.
Madam President,
Councilman Limpert.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings for Resolution 2020-144 as the Planning Director expressed the need to complete submission of the cooperative agreement before the end of the year. Ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings made by Councilman Limpert, seconded by Councilman Kelly. Roll call, please.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
That motion passes with a vote of 6-0. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address council regarding resolution 2020-144, please do so now.
Madam President,
Councilman Limpert.
hearing none, I would like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2020-144 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt resolution 2020-144 made by Councilman Limpert, seconded by Councilman Kelly. Roll call, please.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Resolution 2020-144 is adopted with a vote of 6-0.
Legislation on first reading. Resolution 2020-146. A resolution dispensing with the RFP process and authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Senior Transportation Connection of Cuyahoga County to provide for, among other services, senior citizen transportation services and declaring an emergency.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2020-147. A resolution authorizing the mayor to purchase two 2021 Ford Explorer Police Interceptor vehicles at a cost of $65,508 through the state purchase program, and further authorizing the mayor to execute all contract documents.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce, place on first reading.
Resolution 2020-148. A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a one-year contract with TAC Computer Inc. in order to provide maintenance and repair services to the computer hardware and software in the North Olmsted Police Department and declaring an emergency.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce, place on first reading.
Ordinance 2020-149. An ordinance to revise the codified ordinances by adopting current replacement pages and declaring an emergency.
On behalf of myself and all of council, I introduce, place on first reading, and request suspension of the rule requiring 3 readings and formal committee review. We can move on to the next one. We'll hear that in committee.
Resolution 2020-150. A resolution authorizing and affirming the mayor's acceptance of a scoreboard for the Recreation Center ice rink offered by the North Olmsted Hockey Club, and further authorizing the North Olmsted Hockey Club exclusive advertising rights on the donated scoreboard for a limited time as a means of fundraising for its programming.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce, place on first reading.
Thank you.
Resolution 2020-151. A resolution approving of and authorizing the mayor to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association for the city's dispatcher employees for the period January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce, place on first reading.
Resolution 2020-152. A resolution approving of and authorizing the mayor to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council, Inc. for patrolmen, sergeants, and lieutenant employees within the city's Division of Police for the period January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce, place on first reading.
Thank
Resolution
you.
153. A resolution approving of and authorizing the mayor to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council, Inc. for corrections officers employees within the city's Division of Police for the period January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce, place on first reading.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Councilman Schuman.
did you need somebody to move for suspension on 149?
Councilman, that time has passed. We'll hear that in committee.
Okay, that's fine.
Going to go into finance, actually.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. So looking to schedule our committee meetings for next Tuesday, December 22nd. Councilman Broussard.
Thank you, Madam President. We'll call a Public Safety, Health and Welfare Committee meeting to discuss resolutions 2020-147 and 148 from 7 until approximately 7:10 p.m. I'll ask that the mayor and/or his designees be present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Schuman.
I'm going to ask to have a finance committee on 12/22 at 7:10. I'd like to have the mayor and the HR director there, and we will be discussing 149, 150, 151, 152, and 153. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Glassburn.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm calling the Intergovernmental Relations Committee to meet on 12/22 at 7:30, if I did my math correctly, to consider 2020-146, pertaining to senior transportation connection and ask the planning director or the mayor's designee to attend.
Thank you. And I'd like to call a special council meeting for Tuesday, December 22nd at 7:45 p.m. Agenda items will include the budget, the bond legislation, and other topics that will be properly noticed once our agenda is set. In addition, I would like to call a public hearing on January 12th, 2021 for 2020-145. And is there a motion on the floor to excuse the absence of Councilwoman Williamson tonight?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion to excuse the absence of Councilwoman Williamson made by Councilwoman Heeman, seconded by Councilman Schuman. Roll call, please.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert.
Yes.
Councilwoman Heeman is excused from tonight's meeting with a vote of 6-0. With the agenda being completed and there being no further business to come before council, this meeting of December 15th, 2020 is adjourned at 9:23 p.m.